makes this speaker particularly interesting is it represents the fact that this sort of workshop or conference has joined together both scholars and practitioners. And so we're going to now hear from Mohammad Hannan Hassan, who goes by, so we all know, Hannan. Hannan is the Assistant Director for Education and the head of the Madrasa Strategic Unit at the Majlis Ulama Islam Singapura, which is the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore. In this capacity, he is responsible for madrasa education and all madrasas in the country of Singapore, which includes policy planning, training of teachers, student development, and ministry advising. In addition, he is also the project director of their new curriculum development project, which gives him authority for developing curricula, syllabi, textbooks, and so on and so forth for all madrasa education in Singapore from grades 1 through 12. And in his spare time, Hannan is currently a PhD candidate in the Institute for Islamic Studies at McGill University, and in which he works at the area of interfaith dialogue between Muslims and Jews, and his dissertation is on non-Muslims under Islamic legal thought and practices in Aceh between the 16th and 18th centuries. We're fortunate to have him here. Please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation. Probably I've been selected to present the last, probably because Singapore is the smallest in terms of size. And probably Singapore is also the youngest amongst these giants historically and civilizationally. But also, Singapore is also known, some people describe Singapore as the most notorious, most naughtiest. And probably I'm also the youngest amongst the presenters today. I was enticed to change my presentation when I listened to Prof. John Vol. Very interesting points, but I think I will stick to my presentation. What I will do here is to see how some of these ideas are translated into actual practical educational programs in terms of books, textbooks, teaching materials, and so on and so forth. So I'll stick to that thing, inshallah. Now, let me begin with a personal story. Some years ago, I was a senior civil servant who's involved in foreign policies, home affairs, and security, national security matters. He asked me, well, he invited me for coffee, and he asked me, Hannan, are you a Wahhabi? And I said, what do you think? I said, I'm not sure, because according to the report, you are a Wahhabi. Then I asked, why am I being labeled or being categorized as a Wahhabi? He went on and said, well, according to the reports, you do not perform qunut in your Fajr prayer. You do not perform qunut in your morning prayer. If you're aware, Shafi'i would perform the qunut, whereas the others do not. And it was said that you also do not organize the tahlil after the funeral, the death. So usually the Malay in particular would organize tahlil. Not that I do not attend, I do attend, but you do not attend. I said, that's interesting. So that makes a Wahhabi for not performing qunut or not attending a tahlil arwah. Well, I said, then what do you think? Do you think I'm a Wahhabi? Now, this question is not new to me. I've been asked before. Or rather, I've been labeled before as a Wahhabi. But the difference is the pre-911 and the post-911. The pre-911 Wahhabi have different connotations. It was more of a ritual perception of a Wahhabi. That, see the examples, you don't perform your qunut, you don't attend the tahlilan and so on. And even then, I remember the word was not Wahhabi, it was kaum muda, kaum tua's discourse. Yeah. But now the post 911 has different connotations. And that's why that guy asked me the question. In his capacity as someone is working on the foreign policies, national security, it carries a political connotation, a strategic and military connotation. Well, it was a long discussion. I don't intend to tell you the story, but it tells us something about certain understanding, how we are shaped by certain experience of the time and place. Yeah. Allow me to begin with some preliminary remarks, after which I will zoom into examples of how we attempt to contextualize some of these ideas into the form of Islamic education program, and that is in the full-time madrasas. I will explain what do I mean by full-time and part-time madrasas, and I will conclude my presentation. In fact, I will conclude the presentation made in Georgetown and here in Michigan. It was the same theme, although with different emphasis. Yeah? Now, there is this problematic myth or perception. What I call there is this preoccupation with the center and neglect of the edge. Now, by center, I mean the center of Islam. I mean the Middle East. Yeah, we tend to think of Islam, and we tend to look to understand Islam through and the Middle East culture. I do acknowledge that the coining of the word center and edge is a problematic, it's misnomer. But never mind, I'll still continue to use the word, because the word center and edge here is already presupposing a certain exists geographically that one refers to. Yeah? I think that is problematic, because as we have seen thus far, how Islam has spread until to the far east of the world, and with different cultures. So that is a problem, and therefore I personally sense that there is a neglect to study Islam in Southeast Asia. It is telling to note that Islamic studies, Islamic programs in many parts, in many universities, is parked in not Islamic studies department or institute, but in Middle Eastern or Near Eastern faculty or department, isn't it not? I'm not sure here in Michigan, in Washington, but often Islamic studies is studied under, is parked under the Middle Eastern studies or department. I wonder why. Yeah. Now, secondly, there's also this obsession with political history. One studies Middle East Islam, and also we focus our discourse on political history. Even in our learning, in our curriculum, where we talk about Islamic history, the seerah of the Prophet, the history of the Prophet, we tend to focus on the political and military experience. So we talk about the ghazawat, about the wars, about the battles, and so on and so forth. Seldom do we talk about the civilizational aspect of Islamic civilization. That is a problem also, and that's one of the things that we attempted to do in our program, which I will demonstrate. The problem is also, when we do that, we tend to impose the Middle Eastern experience, political experience, in understanding Islam elsewhere. So I have been labeled as Wahhabi through that lens, the understanding of what is Wahhabi, the Middle Eastern experience, the political experience, and I've been labeled as a Wahhabi through that experience, which is really unfortunate. But that's the fact. I also think that there's a peer representation of Islam and Muslim in Southeast Asia, but I'm glad to note that Bob Hakent noted that there is, alhamdulillah, there's an improvement in terms of interest and understanding of Islam and Muslims in Southeast Asia. Now, let me just briefly share the context here. We are talking about Southeast Asia. The context, briefly, we know that it is all the presenters have demonstrated that it is a highly heterogeneous, a pluralistic region, culturally diversified. Indonesia, from Aceh, North Sumatra to Sulawesi, they are not one. It is culturally diversified. And also we need to appreciate that Islam and adat, Islam and local tradition, they are both engraved upon each other. We cannot separate Islam and adat. There is tendency, being trained in Middle East myself, I was brought up, I spent even my teenage and adult years in Middle East. There's this sense that adat it's not Islamic. Yeah. And I didn't mention just now that there's also this attitude, one of the myths is this attitude, I know better. The center will think that I know better, so I tell you what is authentic, what is authoritative. Yeah. So, but in order to understand Islam and Muslims in the Malay world, one has got to appreciate the role and the place of adat. Yeah. So I've got no time to elaborate on that point, but suffice to note that point. Yeah. And like Prof has presented how populous the Muslim are in that region. Do remind me 8 minutes before my time so that I could organize my presentation. Don't let me know 2 minutes before. I got that. Then the Singapore context. It is a multiracial, multi-religious, secular state. Secular state does not mean secular community. Muslims are minority, 15%. But what is interesting, Muslims in Singapore culturally are not minority because Muslims in Singapore are part of Malaysia. They were part of Malaysia. I've got my family members, half of my uncles and aunties in Malaysia, the other half in Singapore. So happened that during the separation, some of them were living in Batu Pahat in Johor, and some were in Singapore. My father was so happened to be in Singapore. My grandfather so happened to work in Singapore, so therefore they become Singaporeans, and the rest become Malaysian. Singapore, Muslim in Singapore, majority within Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, and so on. But politically, it is they are minority. We need to know that madrasas and being a secular state, the state is not responsible for religious education. Religious education is left to the religious communities, Muslims, Buddhists, and so on. But what is unique about Singapore, despite being a secular state, in Singapore we've got what we call AMLA, the Administration of Muslim Law Act. That is a parliamentary act, and therefore MUIS, the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, is a government agency. It is a statutory board, the legacy of the British colony. And religious, it is a vibrant city, globalized city, highly competitive, technological and scientific advancement. Singapore wants to be the world's hub. And if you notice this world dot, Singapore red dot, anybody can remember that red dot? Do you know what does it mean, red dot? Habibie, the president of Indonesia, used to describe Singapore as that little red dot. Which he can take this little island and put at Lake Toba, because Lake Toba, the size of Lake Toba is the size of Singapore, or in fact bigger. Lake Toba itself is bigger than Singapore. So this little tiny red dot. But Singaporeans take advantage of this red dot, and it becomes a brand in Singapore. You can Google for this world dot red dot Singapore. You will see very detailed studies about that. Yeah, so it's very interesting. That's how Singapore works. and the notion of Singapore in the world and the world in Singapore. So we can imagine the context. And so the question is, how does Islamic education deal with such context? One has got to understand the historical background. So the time does not permit me to talk about the evolution of the madrasas in Singapore. But okay, let me just give example of there are two types of Islamic education or madrasa. One is the full-time madrasas. It means the children go to these madrasas 7:30 to 3 p.m. or 4, depending on the school. It's a full-fledged school. We call it full-time madrasas. They sit for national examinations and also the madrasas examination. The other type is the part-time madrasas, or we also call it mosque madrasa, because generally these madrasas are conducted in the mosque, although it's not only the mosque. It is full-time madrasa. These are the children who go to national schools and then attend Islamic education 3 hours a week, or attend during the break. Yeah. The number of children attending full-time madrasas, only 4% of the Muslim children, schooling children, go to the full-time madrasas. But although it is a small number, but it is very important, very significant. If you wish, you could Google and look at the madrasa debate, how heated, how sensitive, because madrasa is no longer a communal problem or issue, it is a national concern. Yeah. Now, I'll show us the website where you can get some of these notes. It is not possible for me to talk about the curriculum. I'll present this through what we call the CDP, the Curriculum Development Project, of which I'm the director. Now, the revision of the curriculum started as early as mid-90s. So it has nothing to do with 911 or the madrasa debate in 1999. But the discussion to reform, I use this again with caution, because sometimes the word reform could also refer to Wahhabism, that kind of reformism. So it's very difficult sometimes. I was sharing with Bob George, sometimes to use words, because people have different meanings and different understandings of the word. So it has started as early as mid-90s to the formation of Curriculum Development Committee, whose task was to review the Islamic education program in Singapore, which include full-time and part-time madrasas. Series of consultations, studies, seminars, and workshops were undertaken. Now, as a result of which, a paper on madrasa education was formulated. I'm honored to, basically, I drafted the first paper. And as a result, paper on madrasa, and eventually the curriculum development project was initiated in 2001. Okay, thank you. We try to integrate the different sciences. Madrasas has a unique role. Madrasa is not trying to compete with the national schools, but it has its distinct and unique role to produce religious elite and leaders, but they are cognizant in both religious and worldly sciences or matters. Yeah? These are some of the desired outcomes of education. You may refer to you can download some of this information to the website. Let me give some examples how we try to translate some of these ideas in terms of integration, cross-disciplinary, and a value-based subject. Now, this is a textbook for a full-time madrasa, textbook of full-time madrasas. This is a subject we call Islamic Social Science, Islamic Social Studies, yeah, for primary one, which primary one is equivalent to almost grade 3 in the States. No? Very unfamiliar, unprecedented in a textbook for madrasa. First, you will notice the language. All this while, it has been in Arabic. Books from Yemen, from Azhar, has been in Arabic. And if not in Arabic, it will be in Malay. Even the choice of colors, the pictures, these are all done consciously to ensure that you represent the different. So you've got the the Indian, I hope it looks like India, Chinese, Malay. Even when we talk about Malay, we must be sensitive of the different groups like Bugis, Boyanis, no? So, and we try to integrate not only the aqidah, but also other skills like geographical skills, knowledge about others. So this is basically the Southeast Asia, that Islam is not just Singapore, because Singapore is just too small, but elsewhere we also find Islam and Muslims. Yeah. I don't know what happened. The picture does not appear here. You will see a book where we integrate geographical skills, appreciation for nature, environment, social skills, aqidah on the beauty of God's creation. First, I'm not sure why it does not appear here in the picture. Yeah? Oh, I should have checked it before. Okay. Now, this is an example of a teacher's manual, where teachers are. This manual does not intend to dictate what they need to do, but give a suggestion to the teachers of what they can do to ensure that there's this integration of knowledge, there is this thinking skills, infusion of thinking skills and values. So it's not a rote learning. It's not telling the students what they need to know, but engage the students in a constructive discussion. Yeah. So example of a teacher's manual. Age appropriateness in terms of content and language. Unfortunately, the pieces do not appear here, but we give examples of. For example, we talk about age appropriateness. We do not give everything to the child. We used to have books from Azhar for primary 1 or primary 2 when they talk about Saum, for example. They talk about the fasting and what nullifies the fasting, and that include eating, drinking, and also sex discourse, the jima'. But if you do that, then the child will ask that question, and usually teachers will try to run away from that question. They will ask, "What is a jima', sir?" Well, so it is not appropriate. That is not, although we acknowledge that it is part of the fiqh, but in terms of age appropriateness, you do not need to tell that to the child, because the child will not experience that thing. So we need to contextualize. We need to be selective in what we present to the child. Not simply take from the fake books and then give it to the child. Yeah. Okay. Contextualizing child's life experience one. Too bad that the pictures do not appear here. At any rate, if anyone of you is interested to see some of these pictures, you can approach me and I will show you some of these pictures. Yeah. The infusion of thinking skills, the importance of internalization, that we do not simply give them the information, but we engage the children and encourage thinking skills. And we will see this in the teacher's manual, that teachers must ensure that the interaction and thinking skills. One of the most heated debate was the MOI, medium of instruction. Before this, the medium of instruction was Arabic or Malay, but we introduced English as a medium of instruction. Why? I could not possibly tell you in 5 minutes, because it was a 4 or 5 years debate about this, but we can discuss this later. Even the evaluation assessment, yeah, we use different mode. We stress a lot on, we stress teachers training, the importance of teachers training, and we do a lot of teachers training. Now, let me briefly discuss about the part-time madrasas. I will let my colleague tell you what is part-time madrasa, yeah?
Singapore, a vibrant and dynamic metropolis. Change and adapting to change is an integral part of life in this cosmopolitan city of dreams. Its desire to incorporate the technological advancements in every aspect of life means developing a dynamic education system. Therefore, our Islamic education system cannot remain stagnant if it hopes to continue molding young Singapore Muslims into active citizens of a global, vibrant metropolis. The national education system has gone through an overhaul. The new pedagogy is teach less, learn more. Learning has to be enjoyable. Creativity is the new buzzword. The revised National Islamic Education Curriculum will also be based on an interactive and experiential learning process. Here, teachers play an integral role as educators, facilitators, and role models. Activity-based learning, multimedia, projects, group work and presentations, as well as going on field trips are some of the new elements incorporated into the National Islamic Education Curriculum. To engage the minds and hearts of young Muslims, the new curriculum has to be relevant and engaging. This is in line with the various positive changes into the national education system. The new Islamic Education Curriculum, or in short SIES, features a core standardized curriculum that is interactive, age-appropriate, and learner-centric. Apart from the baseline program in the form of Alive, which is an enhanced version of MUI's current Mosque Madrasah curriculum, SIES also provides for advanced and supplementary module that allows mosques the flexibility to organize their own lessons.
Pendidikan agama Islam akan terus relevan dengan gaya hidup hari ini, dengan cabaran yang hadapi oleh anak-anak hari ini, khususnya anak-anak muda, di mana mereka sekarang ini sedang berhadapan dengan perubahan hidup yang pesat yang menyebabkan cabaran hidup juga semakin hari semakin sengit dan juga semakin kompleks. Dari sudut pengisian intisari pula, tentunya kita tahu bahawa intisari pendidikan agama Islam haruslah berteraskan Al-Quran dan Sunnah. Ini suatu asas, suatu prinsip yang sama sekali kita tidak akan tolak ansur. Sebab itu kalau kita lihat dalam sistem pendidikan baru yang diperkenalkan oleh MUIS ini, yang kita lihat perkara barunya adalah dari sudut pendekatan dan juga dari sudut metodologi. Ianya sama sekali tidak merubah isi ataupun konten pendidikan.
Learning Islamic values every day, or in short, alive. That is the main objective of the revised National Islamic Education Curriculum. Students of the Alive program will continue to receive important Islamic values, but the way they are being taught will be different. The fun and engaging learning approach will reduce the possibility of students being disinterested in religion, or worse, being misled by wrong interpretations of Islam. The Alive program starts with Kids Alive for children between 5 to 8 years old. For slightly older children between the ages of 9 to 12, Tweens Alive will be available to them. Learning in a fun, interactive approach will be the main focus for young children.
Alive is an enhanced version of the existing part-time Islamic education system in Singapore. Alive aims to provide an Islamic education that is age-appropriate, dynamic, relevant, and full of significant learning experiences for the young.
We let them discover what Islam is. They might not know as no hadith, no Quran literacy, is not true. Every behind every lesson is like that this has different ways and habits.
Saya nampak anak saya ambil, dia seronok melakukan value add program tentang pengurusan jenazah. Bila dia balik, dia bercerita. Jadi kami mak bapak macam alhamdulillah.
Youths are the future of any society. As such, the Alive program has specifically developed 2 learning modules for them. Teens Alive is targeted for youths aged between 13 and 16 years old. For older youths between the ages of 17 and 24 years old, there is Youth Alive. The curriculum for youths focuses on Muslim beliefs and practices, but also includes teaching of life skills like responsibilities in a multi-religious society. Islamic history and how to understand the Quran will also be taught. Topics relevant to youths will also be touched on, such as boy-girl relationships and navigating the internet.
When the teachers like say to us something, they like produce this kind of energy and indirectly giving us the energy like to develop the interest so that we can learn much easier.
Presently, many mosques, including various Malay Muslim organizations, have started teaching the new Islamic education curriculum. The aim is to get all mosques on board come 2010. In a fast-changing, globalized and technologically advanced world, we have to prepare our children, including youth, for the future today. The new Islamic education curriculum serves as a guiding compass for young Muslims so that they can be guided when faced with life challenges.
You can download many of these documents like the conceptual framework, the curriculum, and many other stuff from our website. This is the Moises website, and information of the Islamic education, Madrasah education, and the Singapore Islamic education system. And there's also a dedicated website for the live program, which you can download many of these documents. Yeah, if you are interested to look at the concept, the philosophy, the goals, objectives, and so on and so forth. Now, let me conclude. This is a conclusion for the Georgetown's presentation and the presentation I make here. The point that I wish to assert and I wish to stress here is not, these are stories, these are examples, but the point that I wish to assert is that while we are not immune and we are not isolated from the happenings and the free flow of ideas and the influences, whether from the center to the edge or vice versa, it does not necessarily mean that the direction is of one way, either the center influencing the edge or vice versa. It does not mean that the center tells the edges what are authentic and what are not, but rather it is a process of negotiation and contextualization, that we continue to negotiate with the text, understand the text, and contextualize the text. Although triggered by others, the direction it takes is uniquely and distinctly local and contextualized to its social, political, and social-religious realities, contextualized to the regions. Both curriculum development project, the CDB for the full-time madrasas, and Alive drew inspirations from others. In fact, the consultants we got for the CDP is from Chicago. But they work based on our directions and our directives and guidelines. We consulted them and we sought their inputs. However, at the end of the day, it is the region, it is the country that decides what's best and most appropriate to its realities, to its needs and challenges. Similarly, we do not impose our experience on others. In many of our sharings with others, we emphasize the need to contextualize the programs. So what we're presenting, we are only sharing our experience. We are not telling others to do what we do. But we stress the point, the need to contextualize the program and to acknowledge the uniqueness of each religion. Thank you very much.
Professor Kanish is professor in the Near Eastern Studies Department. Also, he's the co-director of the Islamic Studies Initiative here.
Thank you so much. I guess my time is almost up. Okay. So these two presentations are very rich and provide a lot of food for thought, but therefore I'll focus just on the most salient features of the presentations that captured my eye as an Islamic studies scholar who specializes basically in Islam in its various forms and shapes across the Muslim world, and then more recently in former Soviet Union, where there are definitely parallels with what's going on in Singapore in terms of Islamic education. And Yemen, I worked in Hadramaut for quite some time, and therefore I can see things from the other side of the equation, Hadramaut being the major source of Islamic scholarship and Islamic Arabian mercantile activity in the area that we have just discussed in Singapore, the archipelago, and Eastern India. So several major cardinal points that I would like to bring to your attention, and maybe as laying the framework for laying the groundwork for the discussion in the discussion part that will follow our break. First of all, what strikes us about the region is the extraordinary diversity and eclecticism of culture, religious beliefs, and religious syncretism is just overwhelming indeed, and quite unique. Very rarely does one find such a jumble or such a combination of so different, sometimes apparently incompatible elements of culture, intellectual activity, and religious beliefs. The other cardinal point, apart from this diversity, eclecticism, and syncretism, is of course the tension between the center and periphery, and how we identify the center, what is mainstream, what is a non-mainstream or deviant peripheral, and in connection with this, how the cross-fertilization occurs among different cultural and religious elements, and why certain traditions are considered to be mainstream and others, and who describes them and who defines them as being either mainstream or deviant or exotic, heretical, and so forth. The third cardinal theme that I have noticed is the challenges that the Islamic communities who live under non-Muslim rule of facing, that is the situation of minority Muslims, in particular in Singapore in this case, and this applies primarily to the second speaker's presentation, to Hannan's presentation. And the fourth theme is the extraordinary diversity of versions of Islam in the region, and how this reflects the global diversity of Islamic religion, where basically the pluralism currently verges on cacophony of opinions, especially in the Sunni world, less so in the Shiite world. There are, of course, divisions within the Sunni, the Shiite world, but there the more hierarchical structure of the clergy of the Republic of Iran make things simpler. For instance, if Sistani says that this is the correct version of Islam, the overwhelming majority of Iraqi Shiites agree or accept his position, since he's the marja taqlid, the source of emulation by all those who consider him to be the major intellectual luminary of Shiite Islam today. Now, having said that, defined these cardinal topics, I would like to present my running commentary on the presentation. Definitely the situation in which the Quran should serve as the only, the predominant object of worship and predominant worship of devotional focus creates the situation when all other types of arts, even though they may be religious in their nature, compete with the Quran for the attention of the believer, for the faithful. And that creates the tension between representational arts, performative arts, from the viewpoint of Islamic theology. Nothing should rival the Quran. Nothing should distract the believers from its all-important message. And that, as a result, we have this tension between the arts and alternative ways of intellectual understanding of the universe, such as philosophy, for instance, because of its pagan origins in Greek tradition. So the presentation by Mohammad Anis Noor was basically about that, how despite this theological restrictions on figural representation and on any other forms of creative artistic activity, nevertheless there emerged a very powerful strand of religious poetry, such as Sufi hadras, which are mentioned, Sufi concerts during which praises of the Prophet are performed to the accompaniment of drum beating, to the accompaniment of singing the hymns, the religious nasheeds, which are also mentioned in the presentation. And in other words, despite that formal prohibition, nevertheless, various forms of religious art and even more so secular art flourished in the area which was so infused with pre-Islamic traditions that they proved to be impossible to suppress despite the explicit interpretations of the Quran and the Hadith that prohibit certain types of performance. At the same time, and I would like to emphasize that in the Shafi'i madhab, we, for instance, find much greater openness to the to the singing and dancing. That are justified by references to the Prophet approving, for instance, the dances of the Abyssinian slaves, or to the performance of the female members of the Khazraji tribe in Medina. He approved them, and that was enough to justify the use of song and dance in a certain tradition. Of course, there were the contrary hadith were ignored. In other words, we have a very creative appropriation of the very rich Islamic legacy, in which you can find practically a justification for every course of action, as long as it appeals to yourself. So Islam basically becomes not a self-sufficient actor, but an object of interpretation and creative appropriation by different groups, ethnic, religious, ethnic and cultural groups within the Muslim society, by which they can justify practically any new activity or any innovation in practice and belief. The performance of female dances, it's just an aside, it's not uncommon in Hadramaut. There are special class of performers who are considered to be a kind of caste, whose women are allowed to dance in public, although most of them are still veiled, but there are performances that are somewhat similar to what I saw in the video clips that were shown in the first presentation. Okay, and moving on to the second, what is important is in contemporary Islamic societies and especially in the societies where Islam is a minority religion, is an attempt by the state, normally secular state, to control religious education by all means necessary in order to forestall the so-called Wahhabi influences. When I was in a newly found university in Kazan in Tatarstan, a predominantly Muslim republic in the Volga region of Russia, I asked what they had computer rooms, which all, of course, the computers and the books were donated by the Saudi government. And what this brings me to the idea that basically it's not by chance that the Wahhabi version of Islam has acquired such a wide circulation, because it reflects basically the economic power which comes with this version of Islam, and there is the perceived or even unperceived pressure from the Gulf to accept their versions of Islam to the exclusion of the local version of Islam. And then the argument would go, since we're the land of the two holy shrines, then our Islam is the most pure. Therefore, veil your women the way we do, wear the short trousers, stick your socks into sticks your trousers into the socks, grow beard, shave your mustache, and then you will be one of ours, and then you will be eligible for funding, as long as you comply with our understanding of Islam. Forget the local saints, abandon their visits and performance at these local shrines, and then you will become the true muwahhid, the true Unitarianist, or that is believer in one God. The same applies to qunut, which you mentioned, the loud declaration of niyyah, that is the intention. Then prayers, use of the mawlids, that is the hymns in praising the Prophet, using celebrating the Prophet's ascension and other things, so which becomes a marker between the local versions of Islam and the imported foreign versions of Islam. Education is a site of struggle between different elements, the state trying to cultivate a tolerant version of Islam against the Wahhabism. And I'll end with a short anecdote. When I asked the people who observe students working in the computer room, the computers were, of course, donated, as I said, by the Saudi, what they were looking for in terms of propriety. They said, we're not so much concerned with porn sites, as we're more concerned with Wahhabi sites. So we try to prevent them from looking at the Wahhabi sites so that they would not become radicalized. So in other, pornography was for them a lesser evil. Let them do that, but as long as they do not visit the Wahhabi websites. I would like to thank the organizers of the conference and the speakers for this very intellectually enriching experience. I really learned a lot, and that I hope the audience did the same. Thanks.